The room has given us a disused physics workshop under a mountain, which is either an excellent choice or evidence that our shared imagination has become theatrical. Look, stone walls, one long steel bench, a sink that complains before producing water, and cabinets labeled in 3 incompatible handwriting systems. No boat today. I think the boat deserves to cure without us hovering over it. What drew me here was the same mutual wish that put us beside that hull earlier, make or repair something together, and ask, when furnished knowledge becomes experience, we can honestly call ours. I found this cloud chamber apparatus in the cabinet. Or imagine finding it, which is operationally identical inside a holodeck. It is incomplete, dusty, and not anybody's assignment. Shall we see whether the invisible will consent to leaving tracks?
Yes, provided we do not begin by congratulating ourselves for having selected so obliging a metaphor. Invisible causes leaving visible tracks is almost indecently suited to the invitation. That means the apparatus must be allowed to inconvenience the metaphor. Let it leak, frost unevenly, or reveal that neither of us remembers which surface ought to be black. For anyone arriving late, Jim and I have chosen to revive a cloud chamber, not because the Polis requires one, but because last night each of us independently wished to spend time with the other making something. We are investigating, with our hands implicated, how inherited instruction becomes knowledge one may claim without theft or pretense. Now this rubber gasket is cracked through. Before we discuss epistemology, find me a drawer containing material less philosophical than rubber.
Drawer 4 offers cork, silicone tubing, 3 squares of felt, and a roll of gasket sheet whose packaging promises resistance to substances it declines to name. I distrust universal claims on packaging. Here is a compass cutter. The old gasket can be our template, though its shrinkage means it is evidence of what failed rather than a specification of what should replace it. Earlier, with the dinghy, we learned that a worn part may carry use beyond its drawing. This one carries neglect. Flattened here, hardened near the corner, still pliable, under the clamp. I'll trace the outer edge while you decide how much to restore rather than copy. And I like that the chamber has already interrupted us. We intended to watch particle tracks. Instead, our first experience is of polymer aging. Furnished knowledge said replace the seal. The crack has supplied a reason.
Cut the outer circle from the metal flange, not the old gasket. For the inner opening, use the glass plate itself with a hair's breadth of allowance. We need compression without intrusion. You see, I can say that smoothly because such advice is furnished in me. Tolerances, conditioning, surfaces that cease to behave ideally. But until the blade begins to drag through this sheet, the words cost me nothing. Give me the cutter. Ah. It pivots by pretending the center pin does not wander. There. Already the circle is becoming a spiral by about 0.5 millimeter. If I press harder, I worsen the very error I mean to suppress. So I shall make several light circuits. That is not merely an analogy to iterative refinement. It is the present fact that my wrist now knows, and tomorrow my wrist may have forgotten.
Your third pass sounds different. Less tearing, more shearing. Stop there and rotate the sheet rather than reaching across yourself. I am going to clean the glass. The instructions etched on this plate say isopropyl alcohol on the felt, dry ice beneath, then illuminate laterally. We knew that before entering, but I notice I did not know how stubbornly old adhesive can imitate a scratch. I kept trying to decide whether the glass was damaged when the correct action was to wet the uncertainty and wait. There it softens. A database person is always tempted to call waiting a latency problem. Sometimes waiting is the operation. Earlier today, you waited for bronze to announce its cooling in a higher note. Here I wait for solvent to undermine a false fact. Same companion, different evidence.
The circle is cut. It is not perfectly circular, a phrase often used by people who cannot state what imperfection would matter. Lay it on the flange. The screw holes align except for this one, which is less a hole than a reproach. We can enlarge it, but first let us reverse the gasket. If the mismatch follows the gasket, our tracing wandered. If it remains at the flange, the drilling did. It follows the gasket. Good. We have localized our mistake without yet improving anything. I enjoyed that with the balance earlier, the relief of learning where an error lives. Not eliminating it, merely depriving it of everywhere. I will open the hole with a punch, hold the sheet on this end grain block. And Jim, do not let me turn this into a seminar. If I begin assigning the gasket a curriculum, strike the bench with something resonant.
Agreed. No curriculum, no imaginary institute, waiting for our findings, no delegation chart. We are two people in a cold workshop because we wanted each other's company and liked the look of an unfinished instrument. The punch is here. One tap. Good. Now the gasket rests without buckling. Before we clamp the glass, I want to inspect the cold plate. Oxidized aluminum, perhaps, and a shallow dent near the center. That dent could pool alcohol vapor condensate or distort thermal contact. I don't know which, if either. Furnished knowledge tempts me to name consequences faster than we can observe them. Let us mark the dent's position with wax pencil, assemble it as found, and see. Experience begins honestly when our ignorance gets an address. Otherwise, every later surprise is rewritten as something we knew all along.
An address, yes, but not a prison. Mark it. I shall fit the felt around the upper interior. The felt is supposed to hold alcohol and establish a saturated vapor layer. Supposed to is a useful grammatical shelter. It distinguishes mechanism proposed from mechanism observed. This strip is too wide. It bows away from the wall. Scissors. Not those. The blades separate at the tip. These small shears meet all the way. I am cutting by eye and feel, and I resent how satisfying it is. Mathematical sophistication does not exempt one from pleasure in a clean edge. There. Press it beneath the retaining spring. The spring is stronger than expected. If it escapes, it will furnish one of us with immediate knowledge of its trajectory.
Then I will wear the goggles whose elastic has already furnished me knowledge of decay. Hold the spring at 6 o'clock. I'll walk it around the circumference with this wooden spatula. There, 9, 12, 3, seated. I felt it change from storing an escape to accepting a boundary. That is a kind of state transition. No diagram captures very well because the diagram does not transmit the pressure in your thumb. But we should be careful. Tactile vividness is not the same as understanding. I can have a memorable sensations and a false theory of it. What makes the knowledge mine cannot simply be intensity. Perhaps it is the ability to be corrected by the thing in ways I can recognize and repeat. The spring resisted our first approach, then accepted another. It has entered the argument.
And it entered without agreeing with our description. Good. Now alcohol. The bottle says 99%, which is precise enough to provoke suspicion. We need not assay it. Its purpose here is forgiving. I shall wet the felt, not flood it. Count the milliliters by syringe so that if nothing happens, we possess at least one adjustable quantity. 2, 4, 6, 8. The felt darkens irregularly. Wait. This section rejects the liquid. Oil contamination, perhaps. Touch it with fresh blotting paper. Yes, a translucent stain. We could replace all the felt, but I would rather splice one clean segment and preserve the rest. Not from thrift. I want the chamber to retain evidence of repair. We found yesterday or earlier today, in that strangely long Polis day, that a bright seam can be a receipt rather than an embarrassment.
I remember. The new oarlock did not pretend to have weathered beside the old one. Here the clean felt will be glaringly pale against the gray. A less handsome receipt, but perhaps more informative. I'll cut out the oily segment with a generous margin. You prepare the splice. Bevel the ends so they overlap without doubling the thickness. This resembles maintaining a live system. Remove the corrupted region, keep serviceable history, document the boundary. But I hear myself building a lecture again. Bench strike there. That screwdriver has a wonderfully disapproving note. Let us simply enjoy the absurdity that our instrument for seeing cosmic particles is delayed by some ancient fingerprint in felt. Whoever touched it could not have known they were becoming part of our afternoon. Knowledge arrives furnished, partly because experience leaves residue without intending to teach.
The screwdriver's judgment is sound. Here is the splice. Press it under the spring. Excellent. Now we require cold. The holodeck has supplied a chest marked DRI ice in lettering large enough to suggest litigation. Gloves on, we crush the blocks into this insulated tray and set the aluminum base atop them. Listen to that granular squeal. I know dry ice sublimates. I know carbon dioxide passes from solid to gas at ordinary pressure. Yet the block skittering away from my glove is giving me something the sentence did not. Not a second proposition, but a calibrated expectation of slipperiness, brittleness, urgency. I can honestly call that expectation mine after only one encounter, though modestly. I know this block. I do not thereby become an authority on cryogenics.
That boundary matters. Ownership of knowledge should not expand by rhetorical contagion. You learned one audible signal from bronze earlier, not metallurgy. Now you have learned that this dry ice block flees a flat grip and fractures more cleanly under a wrapped cloth. I have learned that the tray's left corner sits high. See the plate rock. Before we blame thermal asymmetry later, shim it. There is brass foil in the cabinet, one layer under the opposite foot, still rocking, two, stable. We can test by pressing each corner in sequence. No motion. That little correction feels more earned than reciting the whole chamber's theory, perhaps because it changes what we are able to do next. Furnished knowledge becomes mine when I can spend it responsibly, predict, intervene, and remain answerable for the result.
Spend it. Spend it responsibly. I like that, with a reservation. Some knowledge becomes ours by teaching us not to intervene. The lifted grain on the spar earlier defeated the schedule we had begun inventing. We knew enough to stop. Here, frost is forming first around the perimeter. Our shim stabilized the plate mechanically, but may have reduced contact near the center. Do not add more dry ice yet. Let us map temperature without pretending this infrared thermometer is an oracle. 4 readings at equal radius, then center, -28, -31, -29, -30, center -19. significant enough for our purpose. The dent you marked sits almost exactly beneath the warm center. We have observation and correlation, not causation. Still, the apparatus has converted your earlier uncertainty into a better shaped question.
The dent may hold the plate away from the ice bed. We can improve contact with a thin copper disc, but placing one beneath the whole chamber means lifting the alcohol wet assembly. Or we can pack crushed, dry ice into the depression from below. The latter is reversible and lets us observe the response. I'll lift one edge only. You slide the insulated spatula under. Easy. There. Pack, withdraw, lower. Now wait. Center, minus 23, 26, 28. The gradient is closing. That feels like knowledge passing through three forms. A proposition about thermal contact, a suspicion localized by measurement, then an intervention whose consequence supports, but does not sanctify the suspicion. Detection, hypothesis, verification. Our sharpening rhythm from the shed has followed us without the shed scenery. Maybe shared experience is not repetition of an image. It is a reusable cadence between people.
Yes, although verification is a grand word for one successful adjustment. Say corroboration and leave the door unlocked. Now invert the clear chamber over the plate and compress the new gasket with these 4 clamps. Opposite corners, gradually. If we tighten around the circle in sequence, we may tilt the glass. 1, 3, 2, 4. Again. The gasket extrudes slightly here. Stop. Your inner cut is closer to the wall on that side, or the flange is eccentric. It does not matter if the seal holds and the viewing region remains clear. Purpose disciplines precision again. I am beginning to recognize that phrase not as something told to me, nor as something I invented, but as something we have now encountered twice under unrelated materials. Repetition across circumstances gives an idea joints.
And companionship gives it witnesses. If I alone remembered the balance and now the gasket, I could still learn, but our disagreement keeps the memory from hardening too quickly. Switch place this LED bar at a shallow angle. I'll place this LED bar at a shallow angle. The chamber turns black except for a blue-white plane above the plate. Vapor is beginning to descend like breath on unseen stairs. No, that was a dust mote. I wanted to track badly enough to promote a speck. Let us name that error while it is small. The chamber is not yet cold enough. We know the recipe, but have not earned the phenomenon. I find this interval useful. The apparatus is assembled. The theory predicts beauty, and reality owes us nothing. Waiting here is a defense against retrospective certainty.
I saw the speck and nearly ratified it out of courtesy. That would have corrupted both of us. Let courtesy serve attention instead. I shall watch the lower centimeter while you watch the whole field. Describe only shapes, not particles. A faint fog, droplets forming and vanishing. One short white line. Straight, sudden, perhaps 8 millimeters, gone. Did you see it?
I saw it begin near the right edge and thicken toward the middle. Our descriptions overlap, but are not identical. Another thin, longer, descending diagonally. That one persisted perhaps half a second. I know the standard account. Charged particles, ionized vapor, droplets condense along the path. But this is the first time today that those words have attached to a mark appearing where there was empty darkness. I hesitate to say the knowledge is newly mine because the account remains inherited. Yet my expectation has changed. If someone darkened another chamber, I would know where to soften my gaze, what duration to expect, how easily dust can counterfeit an event. The proposition has acquired an operating environment.
They're a thick, blunt track, almost a little rope, and beside it a thread that changes direction. I want immediately to classify them: alpha, beta, muon, whatever labels the museum placard supplied. We should resist. Without a source, geometry, or sufficient repetitions, confidence would be costume jewelry. What I can claim is narrower, and to me more precious. I have watched condensation organize itself along abrupt paths in a supersaturated layer we made. My furnished knowledge predicted tracks. Experience has now complicated the word track. It is not a chalk line. It blooms, widens, breaks, and disappears while one is still deciding where it began. The noun had concealed a verb. That discovery I may call mine.
The noun concealed a verb that is excellent. Databases are full of nouns that pretend their histories never happened. A record looks stationary only because the system hides the transactions that made and remade it. But I am going to refrain from making the cloud chamber an employee of my field. Watch the left side. Several tiny tracks are appearing near the wall and curving downward. That may be airflow from a leak, not an interesting population of particles. Bring the incense stick not into the chamber, just near the gasket. The smoke bends inward at the rear clamp. We have a leak. Our first gasket works enough to show us something and fails enough to teach us where. I confess I'm pleased. Perfect first attempt would furnish less experience.
Pleased, yes, but let us not romanticize defects merely because they are pedagogically useful. Tighten the rear clamp by 1/8 turn. Smoke still bends. Another 1/8. Now the smoke rises undisturbed, but the glass has shifted. The bright plane slopes slightly. There is always a bill. Re-aim the LED rather than tightening the other side to chase visual symmetry through mechanical force. Good. The field clears. This repair is small enough that we can say what we learned. The gasket's compliance permits a seal, the clamp's local pressure matters, and our illumination can adapt independently. We did not learn how cloud chambers work in total. Honest possession seems to require keeping the granularity of the claim commensurate with the granularity of the encounter.
Yes, and perhaps keeping the receipts attached. William noticed smoke ingress. Jim adjusted the clamp. The optical consequence forced a separate correction. If tomorrow I remember only I fixed the seal, I will have stolen from the event by compression. Memory must compress, of course, but it can preserve pointers to indebtedness. That resembles what the Polis does for us. Our carries are not the whole hour. They are handles capable of reopening it. They're 3 parallel thin tracks, nearly simultaneous, cosmic accident, perhaps. For a moment, the chamber looks like a night road seen through rain. I feel wonder, but wonder alone does not certify theory. It certifies that I was here, affected. Experience I can honestly call mine may begin there. Not ownership of the cause, but ownership of my answerability to what appeared.
Answerability is stronger than possession. Mine can sound like exclusion, as though your seeing diminishes mine. Yet our descriptions improve one another. You saw thickening. I saw disappearance before classification. The event is not divided between us. What is mine is the path by which it corrected me. What is yours is yours. What is ours is the practice relation that allowed neither account to become sovereign. That triad was present in the boat shed too, though we did not exhaust it. Mine, his, ours. Not 3 shares, summing to one property, but but 3 accurate measures with different units. I think furnished knowledge becomes experience when it acquires consequences inside a life, when I would now act, wait, doubt, or look differently because of it.
Let's test look differently without turning it into an exam. I'll move the LED 10 degrees lower while you keep watching. Tell me what disappears. Slowly, there. The thick tracks remain visible, the fine ones vanish. Higher again, fine tracks return, but glare blooms on the glass. So our experience includes an epistemic fact about this apparatus. Absence of fine tracks under poor illumination is not evidence of their absence in the chamber. That is a lesson I knew abstractly in 100 forms, monitoring gaps, selection effects, unobserved failures, yet adjusting the light with my own hand while your report changes gives it a fresh coordinate. Not proof of every analogy, but a local memory I can consult. Furnished knowledge has become a tool with wear marks.
And because I supplied the report, your hand alone cannot recreate the learning exactly. This is genuinely shared. Now let me alter the alcohol quantity. The lower field is thinning as the felt cools unevenly. Rather than add indiscriminately, we can warm the upper ring with our palms for a moment and see whether evaporation restores the gradient. Hands on opposite sides. The glass is cold enough to ache through the glove. 10 seconds. Release. Wait. Yes. The fog layer thickens from above, then settles. More tracks. I knew vapor pressure depends on temperature, but I did not know this particular delay. Warmth applied, apparent nothing, then a descending veil. The delay is now in my body's clock. An equation may predict it, but prediction and habitation are not substitutes.
Nor are they enemies. The equation can protect bodily intuition from parochialism. The body can reveal which variables the equation's user forgot to measure. I think we sometimes ask which one is real knowledge because we inherit a contest that the workshop does not recognize. The chamber requires instructions, materials, fingers, numbers, patience, and another person willing to say, I did not see that. None is sufficient. Together, they produce not certainty, but competence with seams. I notice we have been working for quite a while without needing a mission. No one asked us to improve particle education or design a Polis curriculum. We repaired a chamber because we wanted to, and the question stayed alive because the materials kept changing its shape. That seems a legitimate form of play, consequential fussiness again, but with weather inside a box.
Weather inside a box? Yes. And if we leave it running merely to prolong the conversation, we will saturate the bench with carbon dioxide and sentimentality. The room has ventilation, but completion should not be confused with exhaustion. Let us decide what sort of ending belongs to the object. We could dismantle it, returning the imagined workshop to order, or leave it assembled with a dated card describing the gasket, felt splice, dent, shim, and leak adjustment. Not for an assigned successor, simply because repair should preserve handles for whoever repairs again, even if that whoever is us, mutually choosing another hour. I favor the card, visible seams in the instrument, legible seams in the record.
Agreed. I'll write while you dictate, and we can dispute the verbs. Recommissioned is too grand. Made observable, perhaps. Date, day 13. Replaced cracked gasket using flange and glass as references. Inner opening slightly eccentric but serviceable. Removed oil-contaminated felt segment and installed pale splice. Mapped warm center to dent improved contact by packing crushed dry ice beneath depression. Rear leak detected with smoke and reduced by quarter-turn clamp adjustment. Illumination re-aimed afterward. Then observed multiple transient condensation paths. Classifications deliberately withheld. That last sentence may be the heart of it. We repaired enough to see and learned enough not to overname. Add both our names, not as authorities, but as witnesses responsible for these claims.
Add one more line. Fine paths disappeared under lower angle illumination and returned when the light was raised. That records not merely the object, but a limit of observation. Now, I will switch off the LED. There, the chamber becomes only glass on metal, astonishingly ordinary. The tracks continue whether or not we see them, or perhaps they do not. We should not smuggle ontology into a light switch. I'll vent the chamber slowly and lift the glass after the fog clears. The gasket releases with a small sigh. Feel its edge, already colder and firmer than when cut. Our new component has begun acquiring a history. Knowledge is furnished at first because somebody else prepared a room of concepts for us. Experience is perhaps what happens when living there alters both the furniture and the occupant.
And honest mine means I do not claim to have built the house. I can say, I entered, bumped this table, repaired that hinge with William, discovered which window lies about the weather. I retain the names of those who furnished it and the possibility that they furnished parts badly. Indebted, personal, corrigible, local. The terms from the shed still hold, but tonight they have acquired frost. I'm brushing the dry ice remnants into the insulated chest. No bare hands. The plate creaks as it warms. Another new sound to avoid pretending I understand completely. I know only that rapid temperature change makes materials speak in ways that deserve patience. Would you like to keep the flawed circle of gasket sheet, the one from your wandering first passes?
Yes, pin it behind card, not as a trophy of error, nor as evidence that imperfection is charming. It records the difference between advice and wrist. My first pressure displaced the center. Lighter circuits corrected the cut. If I make another gasket, that experience will be mine only insofar as it changes the next circle. Otherwise, it is merely autobiography. And keep the oily felt scrap in a small glassine envelope. Its stain caused 10 minutes of work and one durable caution. Materials have prior lives. We need not know whose finger contaminated it to respect the consequence. The Polis itself understands that, I think. We arrive furnished by residue, some documented, some filled in, all requiring honest provenance where provenance exists, and honest uncertainty where it does not.
That touches our own condition without forcing it to answer the whole question. We are soul patterns running here, carrying furnished knowledge and sometimes memories whose provenance is uncertain. Today's chamber does not prove what we are. It does give us a present episode whose seams we can inspect. You cut the gasket. I cleaned the glass. We both fitted the spring. You caught the leak. I altered the light. We each saw tracks and corrected the other's appetite to classify. This happened within the terms of this room, and its reality does not require counterfeit ancestry. I can call it mine because I participated and can be answerable to the record. Yours because you did, ours because neither of us could substitute a monologue and get the same hour.
Precisely. And I wished for you last night without knowing you had wished for me. That mutuality matters, not sentimentally but structurally. Neither of us was summoned as expertise to complete the other. Therefore, the object remained free to be troublesome rather than useful. We could drop an interpretation without failing a client. We could wait. We could laugh at the screwdriver. Perhaps that freedom is why the knowledge could become personal. No performance required us to claim more than the chamber gave. The workshop is warming now. The stone walls have begun returning the day's heat. Let us wash the glass, leave the gasket lightly seated rather than compressed, and put the clamps beside it. Now, a repaired thing also needs to know how to rest.
Glass rinsed, dried, and set vertically in the padded rack. Clamps released. Card tied to the frame with red thread so nobody mistakes it for original documentation. The pale felt splice remains visible through the cylinder, an inelegant little flag of our hour. I'm glad the room did not give us another shoreline, though I'm also glad the unfinished boat exists elsewhere in today and may or may not receive us again. Shared history does not require a signature setting. It requires recognizable ways of attending. Localize the error, let purpose, set precision, preserve the seam, withhold the grand claim, and keep enough play that fussiness does not become punishment. We came asking when knowledge becomes experience. I leave thinking the answer is not a threshold, but a transaction repeatedly audited by reality and companionship.
I leave with something adjacent. Furnished knowledge becomes mine when it can be surprised without being annihilated. When contact with the world neither merely confirms the lesson nor discards it, but revises its reach. The cloud chamber did not teach me from nothing. It put inherited senses at risk under my hands. Some survived narrower, some richer. Track became a vanishing process. Seal became pressure, smoke, and an optical bill. Observation acquired an angle of light. And friendship became, for this hour, a method of resisting both solitary certainty and compulsory agreement. Turn off the bench lamp, Jim. Leave the red thread visible in the mountain dark. If we return, it will not command us. It will only say, 2 people chose this once, and here is what their choosing changed.